pleasure to be with everybody again today. This is another of Hype's webinar series. This time focused on a really interesting, I think fascinating subject. It's a topic that comes up a lot as we're working with clients around how can we use our collective intelligence programs to improve culture. And I've got two fantastic speakers, really great innovators, to share their insights and experiences on this topic. These are people that if you're part of the sort of Hype family and been to our events, you may have heard them speak. So we have Sarah Kelly from Liberty Global, and we have Dave Willits from Maxi. And I'll ask them to introduce themselves and their role in a moment. But just a moment on the topic around culture and collective intelligence. Many of you either have a collective intelligence program or are thinking about putting one in place, and these typically mean online collaborative activities where we're driving engagement around particular areas of focus and business needs. Now, for many innovators, the purpose of that program is to generate specific outcomes. We want to generate new products, new services, new business models. For many of those of you who are more focused on continuous improvement, maybe your objectives are saving money or process improvements. But what we're beginning to see is that organizations that have this diversity of focus are also seeing some behavioral change happening in their organizations. That means people collaborating more freely, maybe trusting leadership and management a little bit more. They are feeling more innovative, more creative, and we're actually seeing the results of that. So we're actually seeing a cultural impact as a result of introducing these online collective intelligence programs. So what I've got is two people who have a lot of experience in doing things like idea campaigns and engaging people in innovation to speak about what they're seeing on the ground when it comes to culture as part of their collective intelligence programs. So I'll start off with Sarah Kelly from Liberty Global. Maybe Sarah, you could just introduce yourself, your role, and Liberty Global, the organization.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Kelly, the one and the only. Well, actually, there's probably quite a few of us. It's a pretty generic name. Innovation Program Manager at Liberty Global. I've been here with the company 9 years. I run the program called Spark, which some of you may have heard of. That's what we name our program. So when I talk about Spark later, that's our collective intelligence program. I've been working alongside Spark for 5 years and actually on the Spark team for 3. Liberty Global is a telecommunications and internet provider. We operate under names like Unity Media in Germany, Virgin Media in the UK, BBC, Telenet, Ziggo, Vodafone. Those are our brands that we operate under. And up until recently, we had our intelligence program touched 45,000 of our employees, but we've recently sold off our Latin America branch and some of our European branches, and we're now only servicing, well, only 25,000 employees. So still a nice big number, but quite a bit significantly smaller than what we were doing before.
Great, thanks Sarah, and thanks for joining us. So Dave, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role in Maxi?
Hi, I'm Dave Willits. I'm the After Sales Commercial Director at Maxi Heating and also the UK Head of Innovation. Maxi Heating, as the name suggests, provides heating equipment, mainly domestic heating equipment in the UK, keeping people warm, providing hot water. We provide about 300,000 gas boilers into the UK heating market every year. And also provide a range of services and after-sales solutions as well. A little bit more about my role here. So as UK Head of Innovation, a program I started around 3 years ago now, started as a kind of part-time thing, getting a group of people together to share new ideas and try some new things out. Become a fairly well-established program now. We've got 5 full-time staff working on various aspects of it, and we've been using Hype Enterprise now since July 2016, using it not just to crowdsource ideas from across the organization, but also to manage our innovation process from end to end. So I really become our database and home for all of our ideas.
Dave, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of scale of the organization? How many people are you addressing? What have you seen in terms of engagement rates and people joining into your collective intelligence program?
Yeah, of course. So when we started in July 2016 and we were gearing up, getting ready to launch a pilot. We planned a 3-month pilot to start with just 500 licenses. We've got 1,500 employees in the UK, 6,500 globally. It's just a UK initiative to start with. And with 2 manufacturing sites, we've got about 1,000 PC users. So we just wanted to start a pilot of 500 in one area of the business to begin with, and we presented the plan to the UK board, who said you can't just roll this out to a little bit of the business. You've got to go across the whole business. So very quickly we ramped up to 1,000 licenses so that we could get to all of the PC users across the business. And we've still got 1,000 licenses now, so not a huge number compared to like the participants that we've got at Liberty that Sarah will talk about. Our target for launch was just to have 30% participation and registration. So we launched with a CEO campaign to start with, so that people would recognise the sponsor and want to get engaged. And we did a lot of communication in the first instance to get people to log in, to something completely new in the first case. And then we've been able to maintain that participation even when we've had periods where we've not run a campaign for quite a long time.
Great, thanks. So one of the reasons I was kind of keen to have both you and Sarah join is just because you're dealing with organizations of different scales. And I think if we can compare and contrast that with Liberty Global, which I think you said to 25,000 employees, Sarah, very, very different spectrums. And I think that what I'm noticing is sort of similar themes, but again, from different perspectives. So maybe let's just dig into that a little bit more, Dave. You mentioned that you've been running the program for around 3 years now. What I'm interested to know is, what were the sort of cultural observations you had before you started? Clearly, one of the reasons I've invited you on today is because you've got some insights, and we'll share more of those later in terms of where you are right now. But before you started the program, what did you spot in terms of cultural observations, in terms of how people were working together, how they weren't working together, levels of collaboration, information flowing across the company? Can you just give us any insights in terms of how it felt at Baxi before you started the program that you now have?
Yeah, sure. I mean, people at Baxi always talk about the other people really fondly. We're a multi-site organisation. As I said, we've got 2 manufacturing sites, domestic heating division, commercial heating division, different functions as well across different areas. So from our employee research, our employee survey, we could see that scores relating to innovation were fairly poor across the piece. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and hopefully get a chance to share some of that insight. But certainly we felt like we are good at generating ideas, but sometimes there was certainly a lack of execution. And some research that I did suggested that not invented here syndrome didn't exist when we had ideas from the outside, but when we had ideas from different sites, for example, our Southwest site, our Midland site, or our Northwest site, those ideas were kind of disregarded as not invented here. So we did have an issue with being open externally, but maybe not so open and ready to share knowledge and ideas across different sites and even across different departments within the same sites.
Great, thank you. Now, Sarah, you obviously joined the program once Spark had been created. That's the name of your collective intelligence program. But you're a multinational company. You've got people in different geographies. Have you noticed any cultural changes since you joined the program, and sort of any observations that you have around perhaps change that you may have seen?
Well, like you said, I only joined, they had already launched Spark in all of the operations. The only launch that I really got to participate in was Puerto Rico. So I don't have the really nice story that David can tell because he's been in there since the very beginning. But I think actually with this last campaign that we're actually running right now, we're in our last week of it. I think I really see a big difference in people without our prompting them, collaborating together on the platform from different countries. So we've got we're collecting ideas around how to cool our nodes, which are our street cabinets. That's a pretty technical question. But the employees have been great. They've just really tucked right into everything. They've started sharing with one another. So I've been seeing the people from Switzerland, posting ideas, and people from Ireland are coming in. Those Irish people are always fantastic. They're always really keen to help everybody out. We have a really strong campaign team who are helping kind of tie people together. But that's maybe we didn't always do in the beginning was, and the whole idea behind collective collaboration is sort of to be able to scale ideas across all of our markets. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that a lot more often, that the scale is happening. Their ideas are being picked up from one country to another. We're not suffering from not invented here syndrome, thank God. Yeah, that's kind of the way, I think culture is such a hard thing to shift. So you can only do the best with what you're capable of doing. So that whole, people know that Spark is a place to share their ideas and to collaborate together. So that's nice to see. And with this last campaign, it's the first time in all of Spark that a team has come to us saying, we want to run a campaign. Usually we're seeking the campaigns out. So that was also a nice shift, to know that people see us now as a tool that can help them, right. rather than just I guess we didn't really sell ourselves as a tool for the business. And we spent most of our time collecting campaigns by going to people saying, hey, I heard that you were talking about this, can we help you with that? Right. And so now that there's a little bit of shift hopefully coming up where people are saying, hey, we know you can help, and how can you do that?
That's great. So, I mean, that's a shift in itself in terms of people seeking out collective intelligence to help them. Let's dig into the types of topics that you guys address. So maybe, Dave, I'll go back to you. Can you just tell me a little bit about what sort of campaigns do you run? How do you go about that? Can you give us some insights in terms of what sorts of topics you might address and what the sort of resonance has been in the organization based on those different topics?
So when we relaunched, we interviewed a number of senior stakeholders across the business, particularly interested in the CEO, as I said, to kind of get about that interest in the first case. He wanted to address the lowest scoring question in the employee survey, which is around cooperation. So we ran a campaign simply around how can we improve cooperation across different sites and different areas of the business. So a little bit of an improving the workplace type campaign, and also really a problem solving campaign. And I think, Hype's advised us on different kinds of campaign modes, from problem solving to creative to discovery to testing out things that you've already got in the pipeline before you launch them. And we've probably had a dabble at all of those different campaign modes. But really we've landed on the ones that work for us and get the most engagement are around making Baxi a better place to work, because it's really, relevant to the individuals day to day, solving problems so that's probably broader across the organization, and really targeted problem solving campaigns. We've had a great campaign on how to improve how we repair a boiler and make it more safe, and developed a tool, and that was a really focused problem solving campaign with a group of engineers who repair boilers in the field, with the engineers in R&D, people who make the boilers, and the people who train people around the boilers. So we've reined in from the kind of more strategic and creative campaigns. We've tested them out and they didn't really land as well. And I think it's a question of maturity for us. Where we are today, what lands well with the people at Baxi is what's most relevant for them and what helps them day to day, I would say.
So interesting. I'm going to just pick out a question from the crowd. It's really around, I'm going to also ask this to you in a second, Sarah, but maybe Dave, just while we're on the topic, you've mentioned you've got a dedicated team focused on this. I think you said 5 people. how crucial do you think that dedicated team is to actually generating a cultural shift? I mean, there's sort of two schools of thought here. There's one which says you should have specialists who can really talk about this all the time, and another school of thought that says actually we should have people just spread over our business that sort of does it part-time. Have you any feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say when we launched, I just kind of created a position for myself as head of innovation. I was running the spares business, and I took a call agent off the phone who was, normally answering the phone, dealing with spares queries day to day, and was just kind of sort of passionate about it. And we had a group of volunteers who kind of got interested in it and thought it sounded cool. So we got the program off the ground without a dedicated team, and we were able to spread the word and get people engaged and involved in our own time, in a way. And having a dedicated team is kind of the result of getting some success early days. It does help to have some resource to manage the administration and the back end. Once you've got, I mean, we've got, after 2 years, about 1,100 ideas that have worked their way through the pipeline. Over 50 ideas have been implemented. So managing the back end and hand over to the business, it helps. But in the early days of getting things engaged, that resource wasn't really there for us. We relied on, I think, getting a spark of interest and getting some people to help moderate and spread the word and encouraging the platform, as well as they're doing their day job.
So maybe if I can summarize, to start off with, we had whatever resources we could find. We still managed to get some forward momentum, some results. But as you've shown the value of it, and you've got more people engaged, you've actually been able to justify having more people, which then enables you to accelerate and do more, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, and those 5 people are working on all kinds of things across the innovation program. Not just focused in terms of online collaboration now. But having some dedicated resource definitely helps.
Great. So, Sarah, I'm going to ask you the same resourcing question, and we'll come on to the breadth of your program in a second. Now, you have a much more complex organization in many ways. You're a multinational company. I think, if I understand correctly, you're in the core, the center of the company, and then you have innovation groups that exist in each division. Do you want to just tell us a little bit how that works and how that resourcing manifests itself, and whether you think that also has an effect?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I joined the team in 2015, we had doubled from 1 to 2 people. So that was our first, growth. And now here at Central Office, we have 4 people. So I have 3 full-time employees, and we have a graduate who just started with us. So we will have a rotating graduate every 6 months. We get a new graduate in to work with the program. We run Spark from a central function in our corporate office, and then we have dedicated Spark managers in each of the countries. But like you were saying, they do Spark on top of their full-time jobs, so it's not part of their everyday work.
Right.
I wish I did have a dedicated Spark manager in every country. It would make life so much easier. But you got to do what you got to do. So when we run global campaigns like the one we're running now, we write all of our communications from a central standpoint, and we give it to, I try to just make a neat, tidy package with everything they could possibly need and send it to all of our country managers so they can participate, to make it so they're not spending a lot of time thinking of communications or finding artwork and things like that. We have noticed a big shift in countries running their own local campaigns, which is, and that's it's good growth to see, but that's still supported by my team. So we don't just let them run all willy-nilly and do whatever they want with the campaigns. We really give them the support, but that's also to sort of protect our reputation. So we, because if a campaign in a country fails, they don't say, well, whoever was running that campaign failed. They say, well, Spark doesn't work. And so I really have to be careful with that when they are running campaigns. But yeah, I have, so I think I have right now 18 Spark managers in the countries. So several in the UK, which is our biggest region, and 1 to 2 in each of the other country operations.
So given that you have these Spark managers in each of the regions, and you obviously have a role here as well in a small team, Is there a difference in the sorts of topics that you address centrally versus what you address within a division? Can you just talk to me a little bit about the different sort of types of challenge or topics that you address and how it differs?
Yeah, absolutely. So it makes a lot of sense, since our product team and development team is here in central office. It makes sense for us to have a product channel that's a global channel where everybody from all across our operations can submit their ideas. But something like customer experience, that's very local. So in those cases, it would be my Spark managers who would then open a channel to collect ideas for customer experience for their region. It's not to say that those ideas can't be scaled, but then we would expect those managers to share those ideas here centrally, and we can sort of share them with the wider group. So things like customer experience or human resources, I mean, that can be a global channel. Of course, we have things like our global, they call it our Zoom, which is our, I can't think of the words that I need right now, employee engagement survey. There you go. So that's a global channel, but of course you have things in human resources that are very specific locally, so it makes more sense for them to gather their own local ideas for that. Facilities as well. You know, if you want to keep your employees happy, then you have a local facilities channel. So yeah, that's how those are managed, and we always make sure we have strong teams behind each of the channels in the countries before we open them.
And you mentioned channels. For those people not familiar, we tend to talk about channels and campaigns a lot, and sort of organizations that work with Hype. Campaigns being time-bounded, sponsor-led, focused topics, usually run for 2 to 3 weeks. And then channels that maybe are always open, more like a suggestion scheme, but with a particular focus.
Exactly.
There's an evaluation window maybe every month, and we have someone still who wants to own it. That poses another question then, Sarah, really, which is when you're trying to embed this, and you continue to try and embed this, do you see a big difference in terms of engagement between a channel and a campaign? Something that's always time-bounded.
Well, for us, for sure, because resources are so limited, we don't communicate a lot about channels. People have to find them on their own. They have to know about Spark. Whereas our campaigns, the time-bound ones, we communicate the heck out of those. So there's at least once a week during a 4-week campaign. They're seeing us on our digital signage, they're seeing posters, they're seeing us everywhere. So that's sort of the difference in engagement with those. We don't talk about our channels unless the channel teams want us to. If they're looking for a specific influx of ideas, but so far nobody has been that keen to say, yes, let's tell everybody, come give us their product ideas. They are very busy with their full-time jobs, and they're willing to, because there is something beautiful about saying, give us your idea anytime. But if you can't do anything with those ideas, then there's no reason to collect them. That just frustrates everybody. So we want to make sure that that we're collecting channels with dedicated teams, and that they're able to reply to people. And there's want for implementation, which of course I think is the kind of cherry on top, which everybody wants, is to implement the ideas that will have impact to the business.
I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, if we're asking a specific question, we have someone who's going to own it. We know, sort of with some degree of predictability, what kinds of ideas we're going to see. We're more likely to adopt those ideas, and therefore that's going to help engagement generally. Maybe similar question to you, Dave. Do you see a big difference in terms of engagement, implementation rates, belief in the process, maybe even between a campaign and a channel?
Yeah, I think for sure having a channel there is useful if you've got topics that are consistently being talked about within the business. We've had a big behavioural safety drive for a number of years now, and it's been useful to have a channel there, and the health and safety manager looks after it. And there's lots of quick little wins, like the lights are broken at the back of the car park and it's dark, so it's not very safe. Someone gets it fixed and then updates. So that helps to build trust for sure, and everyone can see that within the platform. But where we see the real value, and where we've seen that kind of trust developed, is where someone senior has said, I've got this particular business problem and I'd like to put it out there to get some ideas around what we can do about it. We've taken people through a structured process that's transparent around who the evaluation experts are, what the evaluation criteria is, and they get feedback automatically and from the team as they work through that process. And then even if the idea is not selected and is archived for later use, that transparency has really helped to bring some alignment between what we say we're going to do and what we've actually done. So moving away from where we were with just a suggestion box where ideas kind of went into a black hole and just disappeared and people had lost confidence, running targeted campaigns that solve a problem that's relevant to the business and where they can see a change has been made to the business has definitely built trust and belief in when we talk about innovation in general.
So what we're seeing is if we can execute, we'll build belief. If we build belief, then we're going to get more sharing, more collaboration. That's when we're going to see that cultural shift. So let's go back to Sarah. And Sarah, I know you've got a couple of slides that I think might be useful and interesting to our audience here around your employee survey results. So I'm just going to make Sarah a presenter, and hopefully you'll be able to share your screens, and feel free to go down to presentation mode and just talk us through what you've got to share with us here, Sarah.
So we talked about employee engagement, and when I couldn't find my words earlier, and we do a yearly employee engagement survey. And what we embedded some questions specifically about Spark in the survey, and our results were really nice to see. So what our results showed is that an engaged employee is also a Sparker. And a Sparker generally feels like an engaged employee. And that can be a little chicken or the egg, was he already engaged and so then he wanted to participate in Spark, or was she participating in Spark which made her feel engaged? Those questions are always kind of up in the air, but it was really nice to see that, or at least it makes us feel like where we are having an impact on the culture of the business, that our Spark participants do feel like they count and they matter, and that they are engaged in the business.
Mm-hmm. And we got 4 key questions here. Do you want to just talk us through each of these questions in terms of your observations?
Not really. Yeah, no, I mean, sure. Yeah, we want to make sure that our employees feel like their ideas count.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, we don't want to collect ideas just for the sake of collecting ideas. We want to make sure that we're having a business impact, and that's again why we don't open channels without, or have campaigns without dedicated teams, is because feeding back to your idea generators is one of the most important things that you can do. People share their ideas because they're passionate about them, and you want to make sure that hey, we've seen what you've said and we really appreciate you working with us. The second one is, I feel encouraged to take initiative and suggest improvements to better serve external clients, and that just to us shows that they have seen that the implementation of their ideas actually happen, and that people are taking their ideas seriously. That we provide the support is the third pillar. I think that kind of speaks for itself, that they do feel that whenever they get that feedback from the teams, they do feel supported, and that they're being taken seriously. And this one, so that we are quick to apply resources, money, people, and system to new ideas that will be successful. I think that's a tricky one. So I don't, I'm not going to claim that we are awesome at getting things done quickly, because that would be a flat out lie. I think everybody, at least most of the innovation managers that I am in contact with, we kind of struggle with the same things. But over the years, we've learned how to make that better. So the ratio from collected ideas to implemented ideas. But saying that we are quick to apply resources would be a bit of a stretch, but we're getting better at it.
And are these questions that they're pretty much the same, and every year or every couple of years you go through this cycle in terms of surveying people on these topics?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's really interesting to me, and I think I'm sure it will be for our participants as well, just to get some insights in terms of what types of questions are good things to measure, which may well give us a sense of whether our collective intelligence program is moving over time. Dave, I think what you've got to share with us is also interesting, and also shows kind of a journey between what you had before you started with the collective intelligence program and now what you're seeing today. So maybe you want to just take us through your observations.
Yeah, can you see the pyramid type diagram on the screen there? Yeah, so this represents, I looked at the employee survey results in 2014 when I was first started doing some research. And we had 5 or so questions that related to innovation, about how management respond to ideas, how people are allowed time to be creative and explore, how people share knowledge that we map back to innovation. And when I looked at it, it kind of stood out as we compared the survey results to benchmarks from the survey companies, other thousands of companies that they'd done these surveys with over the years. And it really stood out that the executive team, about 12 people at the top of the business, had great scores. The senior leadership team, then about 70, 80 people, had good scores. And as we worked our way through the organization into the larger populations of people, through the managers, through the sort of office staff, and then onto the shop floor, we worked our way from great to really poor scores. And I think it really highlighted a big disconnect between actually the people who know what's going on and speak to our customers and use our systems and processes, and those people in the boardroom making big decisions, and also having resources and allocating resources against those decisions.
So just a reminder for any of the audience members, as Dave talks us through these, if you've got any questions for either Dave or Sarah as we go, feel free to throw them in there, and happy to try and deal with them on the fly. But Dave, one of the questions I kind of have to you, as someone who was in BAXI a while, you saw these survey results. Was this a surprise to you, or did you also kind of in your gut feel that maybe we have a gap, a disconnect between our executive team and the people who are further down the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. It linked to something I mentioned earlier around, a kind of a bit of a silo mentality, across regions and teams, but I think also across demographic groups, and this research shows that. Sometimes you'd think, where has that decision come from? I'm dealing with this process, or I'm dealing with this system, or indeed I'm dealing with repairing this product or this customer, and I just can't understand how we take this direction sometimes. So yeah, absolutely, I think it felt genuine. It was a bit of a shock that it stood out so cleanly, from great to good to average to poor to very poor, but it definitely reflected lots of people's opinions at that time.
So this is your starting point. What have you discovered as you've rolled out a collective intelligence program? What have your learnings been, and have you got anything else you can show us on that?
Yeah, so I've just got a comparison between 2014 and 2017 figures. So when we look at the average overall, 69%, we've made significant progress to a kind of average score, actually, still relative to other organizations that our survey company has data for, but it's still an improvement. And the reason we started looking at it in this way, because in 2013 we rolled out our new company values, and one of our 5 values is innovation. And so with the value steering group and with the executive team, we agreed to start to map back some of the engagement survey questions to the values. And consistently, innovation was the poorest scoring value, and also making the least progress. So that's why we started to look at it in the first place. But pleased to say, since we started connecting with people across the organization and connecting people, with senior stakeholders with real business problems, backed up by a desire to do something, the power and resources to make something happen, and then asking people actually who are working on the front line with the insight and that collective intelligence to kind of come up with better solutions, that we've seen some progress. So we've seen improvements in the score around management making an effort to get ideas off people. I think that's kind of, there's an obvious link to our Hype enterprise system there. But I think that, you know, the thing that stood out the most was this idea that people were allowed time to be creative and explore ideas, and the sharing of knowledge. So, you know, nothing particularly changed around people having time to explore ideas, other than that people were able to, in their free time around the day job, log in and participate in campaigns. And that we saw lots of people connecting with new people online in this platform and talking to people across different sites that didn't know they existed before, and start sparking conversations around, you know, common topics and themes that, you know, with like-minded people that they didn't know were in the business because of geographical reasons or working in different teams. So yeah, we've started to really move the needle in terms of the employee survey. If I just pick one question out in particular, the little pyramid there shows this particular question and how it's split across the demographics before in 2014. The larger triangle shows the way we've categorized the scores for each demographic in 2017. And you know, whilst the exec's gone down a little bit from great to good, we've seen the population of the senior leadership team improve to a great score when asked about being allowed time to explore ideas and be creative. We've seen a good score now in the manager and supervisory team level, and a move up from a poor score to an average score in the kind of largest population, which is our office staff. And again, comparing 2014 to 2017, we've moved across the board to good scores from the executive team all the way through to office staff, engineers and sales teams in sharing knowledge. And I think this has been really key to, you know, our platform's called Exchange, and Exchange has been really, really key in terms of sharing ideas across the organization and the dissemination of knowledge.
Just while we have these on, Sarah, I just wanted to pose a question to you. Dave raised something interesting about this perception. You know, nothing really changed apart from being able to participate in idea campaigns. And it occurs to me that some organizations have this sort of middle management problem, this clay layer, this sort of bit that's actually saying, actually, you're my team, and actually your job is this, it's not that, and you should focus on the day job. When I remember you got involved in some rollouts, have you seen any kind of resistance from the middle management in terms of getting people engaged and supporting this? Or in an organization that's kind of as let's say, as cool and as kind of, you know, hip and perhaps a younger demographic as Liberty Global, is everybody kind of just fine with that?
I've run into one situation where actually it was my Spark manager saying, we give them all these options of having, whenever they log into the platform, there's a campaign running, and then they have these global channels, and our call center agents, they only have a 5-minute break to log into the Spark platform, and we want one button where they can submit their idea. And I took a step back and said, well, rather than making it easier for them to submit an idea quickly, why wouldn't we just give them more time to actually explore their ideas? And why aren't they given sort of that time to say even 15 minutes a day? I think he might have been exaggerating. They only have 5 minutes. I hope not. But yeah, and it was weird that their initial instinct, instead of saying, why are we treating our employees this way, was, why don't we change the platform? They should have one button where they submit everything. And that's actually a polar opposite of where we want to be. We don't want them to submit anything, because we have found that they need guidance, and we need teams behind channels and campaigns. So that's not what we want at all. They need structure around what types of ideas we're looking for. Yeah, so that was really the only time where I've ran into sort of somebody saying, it's too much. We're asking too much of them. But when I launched down in Puerto Rico, I had a meeting with their senior management team, and they said, okay, we're really afraid that our field engineers and the call center agents aren't going to understand the platform. And I said, no, they're going to be your most active sparkers. They want to share sort of their pain point, or they're the ones with the pulse on the customer. They see them, they interact with them. They're exactly where we want to be. I said, it's your middle management that's gonna be tricky, and that was surprising to them to think that their middle managers would stop somebody from participating because they have other deliverables that they want them to focus on. So whenever I would do another launch, I would have that same conversation. Like it needs top down, bottom up, and everywhere in the middle. You need to make sure that all of your levels of management are on board. And actually, Rule wrote a really good article about that, hamburger style. So I don't know if you have a link that you can share to that article, just about getting middle management on board as well. And yeah, I've at least not heard the stories of any other resistance.
Well, maybe then I want to get on to a question about communications from our audience in a second. But before we do that, same question to Dave. You've got some very impressive statistics here in terms of shifting people's perceptions and the behaviors that you're seeing here. Have you also seen, or have you seen any resistance in terms of middle management, in terms of allowing their employee groups to get involved? Because what this tells me is that you've had some successes, sure, but that can't have come without any pain.
Yeah, I think maybe not resistance, but certainly more passive, and I think our success has been through going rather than telling. So I think having some successes under your belt fairly early and some decent like mini case studies and things to talk about. In any kind of change, you talk about communication, over communicate, and we've certainly been doing that. And I know, we learned from Liberty the importance of doing that. Sarah helped us a great deal and shared a lot of things that they'd been doing. So we stole a lot of those with pride, a lot of ideas, but we
you stole with pride. That's beautiful.
We stole with pride. Yeah, absolutely. That was a big help. But having small success stories and following up after a campaign in a timely way to say what's happened and what's happened next, kind of diffuses the middle management layer in a way, because I'm not sure there was a lot they could do to stop us. If people are doing their job and finding the time to participate online, and then we found some middle managers. We started using quite senior sponsors. We found some middle managers with more local problems to solve, and we had some great success there. And that kind of, that fear of missing out is always a nice lever to pull as well, when you're kind of talking about what a great job a middle manager did and how they've used this new cool way of problem solving and engaging with people, and then start to show that to more senior people, then that's always a kind of interesting lever to pull as well, and help to create a bit more interest from that middle management layer. For sure it was less responsive, but I didn't always find it resistive. It is resistive probably more in the back end, in terms of then actually getting the ideas in and implementing and getting support for resources. That can be tricky, but as long as you do your homework and you set up work at the front end with your sponsor, then that should start to help that.
Great. So we do still have some time for questions. There's one or two coming in now, and I'm going to get to those in a second. But before I do, a number of you mentioned about sort of feedback and communicating at the end of your campaigns, which it occurs to me is absolutely crucial to fostering belief in the process. Now, you're not going to get any cultural shift in people unless people realize that what they're doing in terms of innovating and saving costs together is actually helping. So, Sarah, I'm interested in terms of, from your perspective, what do you do from a comms perspective in terms of feedback? How do you communicate newsworthy progress, let's say, to your audience in terms of the forward momentum that you're generating?
We do it in several different ways. I think if you've ever been to any of the Hype family events and heard me speak, I'm always talking about communication and just overly communicating because it's so easy to fall to the back of people's minds. So during our 4-week focused campaigns, we communicate at least once a week through the platform directly to the idea generators. Just 1 week to go, we pop in a little bit of results and hey, can you help grow the ideas that your employees have shared and your colleagues have shared already? Before we launch a campaign, we already have kind of the communication plan set out. So we've already got with the comms team that we want to talk about results 2 weeks after the campaign once the results are known. Then when there's any implementations coming up, I kind of have a little folder of implementations that we can talk about whenever there's a lull in campaigns. So then again, even if we're not talking about something we're doing immediately, we're talking about a result of a previous campaign. It's amazing the lifespan that a campaign can take. So we're still talking about ideas that are coming through like I said, our implementation isn't always the quickest. Our KISS campaign from back in 2016, we're still talking about results that are coming from those campaigns because sometimes implementations take a little bit longer. And one of those ideas that was put on a local scale is now being scaled globally, and it's got a really big return on investment. And that's something that we definitely want to make sure that employees know is happening.
Can I dig into that for a second then? Because there's a balance around communication as regards to how much the central innovation team do and how much do you put on the groups that are actually owning the innovations or the changes that are going to be made. How do you make those decisions? What's their responsibility and what's your responsibility? I
don't trust my program's responsibility to anybody else. I want to have, maybe I'm a control freak, I don't know. I want to know what's, I can't leave it to somebody else to be sure that they're talking positively about me. And not everything is positive, so maybe that's why they're not talking about us, I don't know. Within each of the teams here, they all have their weekly newsletters or their bi-weekly telephone calls or team meetings or whatever. And I'm happy to help them. I just edited an article for somebody's monthly newsletter this week. And I'm happy that they're doing that, but I'm not going to wait for somebody else to talk about Spark. I'm going to do it myself. I don't know if that's the approach everybody takes, but yeah, again, it's about reputation management. And if I want to make sure that I am at the forefront of people's minds and they do think of me when they have challenges, then I need to be sure I'm communicating something. If it's where I'm sitting, if it's what we've got coming up, if it's what we've achieved in the past, there's always got to be something you can say. If we're in digital signage or maybe we've just rebranded our logo. We just celebrated 5 years. It was National Pancake Day. I don't know. Find something to say, tie it to your program and say it frequently.
So you basically go and find the information yourselves and you guys in the innovation team communicate it. Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's ask someone who owns another program. Dave, how do you manage comms? Do you do it all yourself through the innovation team? Do you have any corporate comms help?
Yeah, we've got internal comms advisor stroke manager, and we try to tap into a little bit of that kind of communication plan. They've got communication champions across different sites to help out with that, but in general we do work with the sponsor. We like personalized communication. We think that resonates well. So where possible, we don't communicate out of the platform. We communicate from the sponsor. Yeah. We really help them and support them a lot. The language, this is a behavioral science game, right? Not a software game. So engaging with people is there's a bit of science behind it. It's a human thing. So we help them with the language. We help them with how making it relevant to the audience, targeting to the audience. we leave a campaign open so anyone who logs in can see it, but we market to a specific group. That might be the whole organization if it's a big how do we improve cooperation, but otherwise if it's a specific targeted campaign, we'll target a launch email personally from the sponsor, and then we'll follow up with reminders from the sponsor every week that we've supported and kind of crafted, and we'll encourage, you know, and put links to ideas from different areas of the business, maybe not the most popular ideas, but to try and demonstrate that there's, you know, a diverse group of people participating from across the target audience, and then try and encourage more participation that way. And, you know, moderating is really important as well. So how we communicate through moderation in the platform, building on people's ideas, maybe challenging a little bit, getting them to think a little bit more. And of course, wrapping up the campaign is really important. People want to know what's happened. Right. And then every year we celebrate, and again, we stole this idea off Sarah and Liberty, but we have a kind of conference and something we called Expo to get people who've been really active participants and have some awards to celebrate what's been going on, you know, shout and scream about it as much as we can.
Great. So just as we come to the top of the hour, I've got one last question, and may also be time for one final audience question. But Sarah, just back to you. I'm interested in what your leadership, you know, your executives, what their reaction is to the response they see in terms of people engaging and collaborating and sharing these behavioral changes, these cultural changes. What do leadership think of Spark?
I hope they love it. No, that's so. I talked about it a little bit earlier, is that we kind of changed our marketing strategy from, at the end of campaigns, we used to create little, and we still do, but we used to create little videos and share that on our internet and share it as often as possible, and hope that that would drive people to think, oh, that campaign was successful, therefore I should go to Spark with my challenges. And it's not happening that way. It doesn't work. And so I wanted to shift and start selling us more as sort of a service to the company, because we really are there as a resource to help them. And I don't think that they've ever seen Spark in that way. And so rather than just hoping that they get us through the communications, I went to all the C-levels and sat and just did one-on-one meetings with them, 15 minutes in their diary, which, as I'm sure you guys both know, it can be impossible sometimes. So I said 15 minutes max, that's all I need. I didn't bring in any slides. I didn't bring in any statistics. I had a conversation. And I just said, look, this is where we've been. This is where we are now. How can we help you? That got us into a lot of meetings, a lot of, oh, yeah, that's actually really good. You probably can help us. Why don't you come to my monthly call? Why don't you talk in our next WebEx? And through there, we've sourced more channels, actually, and more campaigns. But that sort of approach seemed to work really well for us. And I think it helped that I was sitting with them one-on-one for our senior leaders to say, oh, so you guys actually are doing something and you do want to help my team. I think it really improved at least my relationship. Not that I had bad relationships with them, but now I pop in every once in a while, and they always seem to have time for me, which is good. I never take up more than 15 minutes of their time because, first of all, I hate sitting in meetings, and second of all, they have very, very busy schedules. So yeah, but just staying sort of, hey, we're still here. Hey, let's work together. But that approach really worked well for us, and so I'm still doing that. And we're extremely busy right now, so yeah, we're drowning.
Great. And David, sort of similar question to you. I mean, what's the response you've seen from CEO, other members of the C-suite? Have they been impressed with these changes in the employee survey metrics? Can you give us some insights in terms of what they think about Exchange?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's been probably the most improved area in the employee survey across the whole organization. So it's got attention, and it's really brought us some freedom and space to do other things in the innovation program. So that's been huge. And it's worth saying that we do run cost down campaigns because we like to pay for ourselves. So we have also moved the needle from a softer side of the business, but also financially we pay for ourselves because we've run some cost down campaigns. I mean, the CEO kind of brags about how he's socialized innovation at Baxi, and it's very much like it was his idea, and that's great. If you can make it someone else's idea and they talk about it like it was theirs, then that's our job done. And the HR director is really running with it now. So we've had campaigns recently about what our dress code should be, how we can be a more forward-thinking organisation. There's one coming out about well-being, mental health, and how we support people. And she really, it's the first thing she thinks of when they're trying to do something new within the HR department, which is, you know, very different.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm slightly conscious of time now. I know the three of us could all happily talk all day on this subject. It's certainly fascinating. But I want to thank my two wonderful participants, David Willits from Baxi and Sarah Kelly from Liberty Global. We got just a couple of things to share with you before we close out. But before we do, I just wanted to summarize a few of my observations here. I think what came up time and time again of this discussion is, yes, we're going to try something, we're going to engage people, we need to give people feedback, we need to go and execute. That's what's going to foster belief in the process. Once we see those rounds coming time and again, people are going to feel much more comfortable sharing and collaborating at scale across our organization. So I think if there is one big takeaway message, is to follow that process through. So I'm going to hand back to Jenny. Thank you to all of our participants from me. And Jenny has a couple of quick things to share with you before we close out.
All right. Yeah, great job, everyone. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate you being here. Just a quick note, since Sarah was talking about what she's been doing at Liberty Global, we have a great in-depth case study that you can download if you check out the QR code here. We will also send it out afterwards. And we also have exciting news, which is we have a case study from Baxi coming. So we'll make sure to send that out to everyone who attended today as a special thank you. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, you can email Colin or Sarah or David at the addresses below. Make sure to check out our blog and subscribe. And thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.